Hello, this is Eric Brainsberg, CTO of Heimdall Data again. If you've been following our video series, we've been explaining why the Heimdall PAM for databases is necessary. In a prior example, we showed how nested roles on Postgres are basically hidden from the typical audit schemes. In this example, we are going to do the same thing for MySQL. Now, we're just going to show one example of how this can happen. However, we have identified numerous other examples. This is just to explain the nature of the problem in a very simple way. What I'm first going to do is I'm going to open up a MySQL command line as my administrator, and then once I've set up my user, I'm going to open up an connection as a user. So first, I'm going to set everything up. I'm going to create my database. I'm now going to create a table that we want to put some data into. Copy, paste. Okay, now we are going to create a set of roles. And here we're going to have an example user. We're going to create a role, and then we're going to create another role. We're going to grant privileges on that second role, the nested example role. And then we are going to grant that nested role to the example role, and then the example role to the user. So through the nesting, this user will have access to this table, the table users we are creating. Okay, so let's go through, let's create all that. Okay, user should now be in place. We can do the show grants for the user, and what we can see is that there's no indication that this user has access to the nested example role or anything under that. What we can do is if we specifically come in and ask for what the grants are on this role, it now will show that there's a grant to the nested example role. And if we do the show nested example role, then and only then do we actually see the grant to the table. So this is a hidden access pattern for this user that unless you know to dig into all the roles one at a time, you will not be able to identify this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come in here, and as the example user, we're now going to do an alternate here, show the grants, copy paste. Now here, because we set the default role to be example role, this user is actually able to see the true permissions of what they are able to access. But when we ask for the exact same thing as administrator, it hides it from us. So this shows that MySQL resolves all this information at runtime. It does not actually give you access to this as admin until, or even as a user until the user logs in. And even when they're logged in, the administrator account is not able to see this. Now we can also verify that this actually does work. The user is able to access this data even though it's not visible as administrator. So this is just one example of several that we have found that allow or result in auditing of MySQL access to be invisible via the simple grant tables. Thank you.